Are you looking to take your personal finances to the next level? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, with your host, Joseph Sangle.
Well, welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by Fully Funded Life. My name is Joe Sangle, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Megan Hibbard. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Fired up.
Yeah. We are recording some podcast episodes a little bit in advance because I'm going to be, when this is releasing, which is the first Monday of November,
if you can believe it.
I'll be just coming back from my great adventure out west. So we wanted to put a couple of these down on tape. Do they put it on tape these days?
No.
I don't know if I've seen tape
Digital.
in a couple decades, but we're going to say it on tape just so that we can make sure we can continue to serve you guys. And we're actually going to continue in a series in episode number what? What episode is it?
It is episode number 227.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about something that is continuing a series called the Money Lies series. So tell everybody what we're going to talk about today.
Yes. So we're talking about the Money Lies series that we've been doing from time to time. And the topic is that cost too much.
Right. And in explaining the series, the Money Lies series is something that we believe to be true, but is actually a lie. And so we're going to try to debunk it. We're going to try to demystify it. We're going to try to uncover it because it is the light of truth that helps us expose the lie and then maybe help reprogram our thinking. And so today we're going to talk about that costs. There's an S there. Because we've all looked back in time and said something costs too much.
Yeah, oops,
right?
cost too much.
But we're talking about looking ahead and thinking that something costs, do you like how I'm doing that? Too much.
Yep.
So that's what we're talking about. Isn't that great?
It's great.
Awesome. Before we dive into all that content, I want to talk about some current money events. You know what time it is. Let's go.
Now it's time to get caught up with our current money events.
The Monday Money Tip Podcast is sponsored by the Fully Funded Life Membership Program. The Fully Funded Life Membership Program provides all you need to begin winning with money and live a fully funded life. Fully Funded Life includes 4 key components: courses, challenges, coaching, and community. Courses provide financial education. Challenges help you make massive progress in a specific money skill. Coaching is provided by the Fully Funded Life Certified Coaches through open office hours held multiple times each month. All of the courses, challenges, and coaching results in an outstanding community that help equip, motivate, and encourage you to take your next financial steps toward your fully funded life. Fully Funded Life, courses, challenges, coaching, community. All that's missing is you. Learn more and receive a special offer for Monday Money Tip listeners today at fullyfunded.life/MMT. That's www.fullyfunded.life/MMT. Well, for today's current money event section, we're going to talk about what is happening in the month of November, and we're going to talk about the gratefulness aspect. So it is the season where we give thanks. It's Thanksgiving. If you're my Canadian friends, you've just celebrated it a couple of weeks ago. But I want to, maybe a month ago now, but I want to make sure that for all of those that are listening in the United States, that we think about giving thanks and practice gratitude this month. And one of the things that I love about the holiday of Thanksgiving is that it's not one where we give a lot of gifts. It's something that is really just focused on friends, family, time off, togetherness. And so I really want you to think about this from a money events topic because shortly thereafter, it seems like we go into this splurge surge of Black Friday, which I don't even know if any of that, it used to be that Thanksgiving was sacred and everything was shut. And then it was like, hey, everything opens at midnight. Then it was open at 6 a.m. Now a lot of stuff is just open. And what I would just say is instead of just running to what is the deal and going and getting the deals, I think it's important for us to think about what we could do to practice gratitude for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so what could you give thanks for and how could you demonstrate your thankfulness for it? We can come up with some little suggestions here. Could you write Thanksgiving cards and give those to your family? Could you have a moment during the Thanksgiving gathering where you stand up and tell everyone what you're thankful for in the year? Could you have everybody go around the table and share one or two things they're thankful for before you dive into the unbelievable cornucopia. That's great.
It's a great word.
Great word. Cornucopia, spell that. I don't even want to try. Of all that great food, share what you're thankful for. Is there somebody you've been meaning to have a conversation with that you could intentionally carve out time to be able to spend time with them and tell them for why you're thankful for them? So that's it for I know it doesn't seem like a money event thing, but I find that when you have the attitude of gratitude, it changes your perspective of everything, including how you view your resources, how you use your resources. Anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I think if you're filtering it through that lens as you're going into, the Christmas season, Thanksgiving, you're much more likely to want to be generous with your money. So, some people use that generosity in buying gifts, but for this specific topic, how could you bless others in ways that they might not be expecting as you're going into the holiday season? There's a lot of people, there's a lot of organizations that you could help. There's also a lot of individuals that, maybe somebody has a need and you're able to meet that need because you're filtering everything through more of a generosity, gratefulness
It might
aspect.
be an organization you're grateful for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. I encourage you, maybe right now, as we're 2-3 weeks ahead of Thanksgiving, to start writing down those things for which you're grateful. I think it will position your heart and your attitude to think about gratitude. And that's it for my non-singing current money event section. You like that?
I'm sure people are sad you didn't sing. There's still time. All right, our success story today comes from Joyce, and she has a praise. She said, "Have kept my credit card balance at $0 for a couple of years. Got my emergency fund built. Best of all, next month I get a raise and I make the last payment on my car. I can't wait to see the preview of my next pay stub so I can sit down and figure out my new budget to see how much I can throw at my mortgage principal and how much it will affect my payoff. I'll see how far I can pay it down before I retire. God has not directed me on when that will be, but probably within 3 years."
Wow. So Joyce.
Go ahead, Joyce.
It's very interesting. I think it's interesting. She said she's kept her credit card balances at zero for a couple of years. What does that mean? She's really put together self-control. It also means that she's living by a budget and is making her dollars behave. I also see she's got her emergency fund built, which I'm assuming she means rung number 5, at least 3 months worth. And she's getting ready. Well, maybe it's rung number 2 because she says she's getting ready to pay off her car. So that car would be part of rung number 4. The other thing that I think is interesting, she's going to look at the mortgage principal and see how it will affect her payoff. I hope she's going to use our early payoff calculator, which allows you to put in the terms of a mortgage and then say, if I pay this much extra per month, it'll pay it off this much faster. How many dollars of interest you'll avoid paying. It's really cool. So maybe we can have a link to the early payoff calculator as we celebrate with Joyce all of the progress that she's made.
Great job, Joyce.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're continuing our series, the Money Lies series this week. And so it's things that you've heard or you've absorbed or you've almost come to believe are true. And they're not necessarily true, but
They are not true.
they are not true. But you've said them so many times or you've heard them so many times or you've come to believe them as truth. So we're trying to debunk that. So this one is that cost too much.
Yes.
I try to emphasize cost.
Costs where the word becomes 2 syllables. Isn't that awesome? And that S sound really comes through on the microphone, I'm sure. Isn't that awesome? But here's what I would just say. Have you ever said that before, Megan? Have you ever said that costs too much?
Yes.
Yes. And I think it's okay to say that costs too much, but then to say, but other people have bought it, other people have owned it, other people have possessed it, and it didn't cost too much for them. I put a plural there where it wasn't needed. But here's what I know. There are items in life when you look at them and the cost, the bill, appears insurmountable or seems unattainable or unmanageable or even unwise. It certainly could be true in some cases, but many times people look at a certain statement or a certain item, a certain thing, a certain lifestyle. They will say that costs too much. and they use it as a means to slam the door in their mind that says, I don't have to think through the hard work and the effort, the energy, the new way of thinking that would allow us to be able to accomplish said thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to go into story time for a second.
Story time?
Story time with Joe, and cue the piano music. And this is going to be a little bit of a weird one, and it doesn't apply to the vast majority of our listeners, but then it won't seem like it, but then it will. Is that good?
You really set it up for success there.
I really know how to pitch things. So I really wanted a tractor. I like tractors. I grew up with tractors. I like tractors. Tractors are awesome. I really like the green tractors, the green and yellow ones. The ones maybe made in Moline, Illinois, or Waterloo, Iowa, or near Cedar Rapids, Iowa, or maybe some stuff made down in Ottumwa, Iowa. Some of them are made in Mexico. John Deere's. And I wanted a John Deere tractor. Now, when I say I want a John Deere tractor, I'm living in a subdivision. And I want a John Deere tractor. I'm not talking about a lawn tractor. I'm not talking about a ZTR. I'm not talking about a battery-powered kid's little lawnmower thing or that he can drive around. I'm talking about a real tractor, like with a diesel engine, do some work tractor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking? Mm-hmm. And I wanted this tractor, and of course, it costs a lot, and it's easily able to say, you don't need that. Why do you need that? What is that? Well, the reason that I started really wanting a tractor is I had purchased a farm. And this farm was 68 acres of garbage where somebody had clear cut it. They did not replant it. They left all the limbs laying everywhere, and it naturally regenerated. So it was probably 7 years after being cleared. And when land is opened up to sunlight, God's got a lot of seed in the ground, and it's all going to compete. And it's just, call it a jungle. Might be a lightweight term. It was a jungle. And it needed tractor work, and I kept having to borrow a tractor, ask a guy to bring a tractor, not do anything. And so the moment came where I said, I want a tractor. I feel like I need a tractor, but it costs too much. But what I found is that wiring in my mind kept me from even considering the possibility of owning a tractor. And so I realized that me saying a tractor costs too much was a limiting belief. It was actually a lie. That I could rephrase it and say, how could I afford that? How could I make it not cost too much? And the difference of that cost too much versus how could I afford that, or how can I make this worth it, changed my mindset. And all of a sudden it allowed me to, what I find is that if you have a limiting belief like that costs too much, you won't even look at it. You won't even put it on a list. You won't be put on the list of when farm implements are being sold. You won't look at the magazines where they're listing items for sale. You won't stop by the tractor dealer to know what things cost. You just won't do it. Why? Because it costs too much. And so why would you even do it? Why even bother? It's like unrelatable. It's like unmanageable. And you don't even want to get your hopes up because it costs too much. And what I find a lot of times is that when you keep repeating this statement that something costs too much, that it will swell bigger and bigger in your mind until you cannot even consider the idea that you could. And so when I beat it back and said, how can I afford this? How can I make this not cost too much? It changed my process of thinking and started me considering what could I do. So all of a sudden I found myself at a tractor dealer, and I said, I don't need some big new thing, but I need one that's strong, that's usable. And then I started hearing about people who had tractors for sale. I knew what a good deal was. And one day, maybe a year later, one came available that I had been saving up for that I was able to purchase. Let me give a practical example for business owners, and you were here kind of part of this. When I first started out with I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, and Fully Funded Life, we knew of a software program called Infusionsoft. It is, if people have heard of Salesforce, It was one of those softwares that was available for small business owners that was much more cost manageable. But when I first logged in to see what the pricing was, it was $199 a month. And it was like, you might as well ask for $1 million a month.
Right now, everyone's saying, wow, that sounds...
Yeah, a lot of people right now are like $199 a month, Joe. But there are also people listening.
Yeah.
There are people listening right now who are right on the front edge of starting a business and, dollars are tight.
Yeah.
And you look at different things and you view them as costs. And that's how I viewed it. I viewed it as a cost, $199 a month. How could I ever afford something like that? Well, I remember putting together my good old handy dandy Excel spreadsheet, having my constant contact form. This was maybe 10, 11, 12 years ago. And after a year or two of swimming in spreadsheets and trying to keep track and functionally trying to do what this software could do in its pinky, all of a sudden I look back again because for 2 years I repeated myself this memory from this day that I was first exposed to it and the cost of it, where I kept repeating a lie, that costs too much, that costs too much, that costs too much, to where I actually said, how much was that again? Because in my mind, as our revenue grew, I guess that lie of how much it cost grew. Mm-hmm. And I remember logging in one day and seeing that it was $199 a month. And I was like, shut up and take my money.
Sign me up. Right?
And so we signed up for it. Yeah. And so I think it's important that as our listeners are pondering this, because we went and got it, and all of a sudden it had an e-commerce solution that would allow us to sell our books through it. It allowed us to send emails to the people that had said, hey, I want to hear about stuff that you guys are doing. It allowed us to notify people when we released a new tool. It allowed us to be able to track customers who had purchased in the past so that churches who had done a group study, hey, we could contact them again in the future and say, how did that go? Yeah. What can we do to help you be successful in the future? Do you need another set of group studies? So maybe we could list a couple other things. Have you ever had something that you've looked at and then came back later and said, why did I say that? I've been believing a lie?
Well, I think like our current situation. And eventually we want to be able to have a rental property. And so initially when we sold our first house, we were like, oh, this would be a great rental property to keep and buy our other one. And it was kind of like, I don't think we can do that. Like, costs too much money to have both. And so we didn't do it. But now looking back, we're like kicking ourselves that we didn't do it. But now looking forward at buying another one, for buying our first rental, it seems a lot more manageable and a lot more doable and not as scary because, we've kind of positioned ourselves and we work towards that goal. And so I think when the moment comes, it'll be a lot easier to say, okay, now we're ready because we've positioned ourselves in a way. And we've had the moment where it was like, no, that costs too much, we can't do it. And now we're like, it didn't cost too much, you should have done it. But
it actually, you look back and find out that perhaps it cost too much to have not done it.
Yeah.
So what did you lose out on? You lost out on the continued growth in the value of that property, mm-hmm. that your renter would have continued to pay it off for you. You would have been within, I don't know how many years, closer to having that one paid off.
Yep.
Maybe by the time Logan goes to college, it probably would have paid off.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So that stuff is really important. So I guess what we're saying in this episode today, you're driving your car, you're listening as you're working out, you're pondering what we're sharing. I want you to ask yourself, what is the lie that you're telling yourself right now that item, that thing, whatever it is, that costs too much? Mm-hmm. And it's something that you've said it for more than a week, more than a month. It's been something that you have repetitively said for a year, 2 years, maybe even a decade or longer. And the truth is, if you were to ask yourself, when was the last time you really explored it, you really considered it? It's probably been 5 to 10 years since you've really said, how much does that cost really? Because what happens is this lie remains here, but hopefully you continue to advance.
Yeah.
Your income advances, your net worth advances, your knowledge base advances, your relational base of who you know advances. All of a sudden, these things that you say they cost too much, you can't do them. You realize it really is a lie. You could absolutely do it. You could absolutely thrive while doing it. In fact, it might be the missing key that allows you to do it. And you mentioned real estate. Mm-hmm. I mentioned tractor. I mentioned software for a business. That should give you an idea that this applies to a lot of areas of life. Yeah. I can list some other ones. Right now, if you're just starting out in your journey financially, you may say that it costs too much to contribute to your retirement plan. Mm-hmm. I can't do that. I need that $100 a month. I need that $71 a month that would go to my retirement fund. Yeah. It costs too much. But when we do a quick calculation of what $100 a month looks like 30 years from now, and it's $350,000, you might realize that it costs too much is true, but we have to add something. It costs too much to not do it.
Yeah.
The same thing, you may have way back when said this trip costs too much, but you've changed. But in the mind, your trip still costs too much, but you could go Google it. You could go Travelocity it. You could go kayak it. You could go have this conversation, and you might find out that it's much more manageable than you thought. Mm-hmm. So I just want you to think about the possession, the thing, the software, the real estate, the investment. What is it that you've been telling yourself a money lie about that you say this thing costs too much? Explore it and do it with an open mind, knowing, hey, maybe that's just a money lie. And expose it with the light of truth. What is the reality? What does it really cost? And what does it really cost to not have it? And then maybe, just maybe, you will be able to advance with a different perspective in your money journey and in your life.
Yeah, that's good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's good. I'm interested to see if you guys have something that you're saying this costs too much, or maybe you had a past experience or your current experience, kind of what you guys are going through and what you guys feel like is kind of applicable to you.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, share in the comments, like, what is a money lie that you used to believe that somehow or another you had an aha moment that you said, wait a minute, I've been believing a lie as if it's truth. Mm-hmm. And share that with everybody. That'd be a great way for us to learn together.
Yep. All right, so our next episode, we're going to talk about, should kids have credit cards?
Uh-oh. So that's really important. We know what Dave Ramsey would say.
Yes.
Yes. But we're going to say, what would Joe and Megan say on the Monday Money Tip podcast? That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, Dave's not 100% wrong. I can tell you that. So if you like today's episode, please help us get the podcast other people could benefit. If you're on YouTube, you can like it. You can subscribe to it. You can even click the share link and share it with friends or family that you know could benefit. We also would love for you to leave a review, because it helps the algorithms expose other people to this podcast so we can help more and more people. We also want to hear about your success. Our podcast is powered by your success, so you can share it with us on any of those social media platforms, or you can email it to us privately at info@iwbnin.com. That's info@iwasbrokenowimnot.com. Any last words you'd like to share?
I think really trying to fight the lie, like maybe go back and listen to some of the other money lie series that we've had and try to figure out which lies you're believing. And I think trying to combat those as you feel them coming up, and combat them with the truth and like different things that we've talked through in different ways that you're believing the money lie versus what's true. So we've had a bunch of them to talk about. So this one may not apply to you, but maybe
in the
another
show
one.
notes, we'll link to all the Money Lies episodes.
Yeah.
So check it out. Hey, until next Monday, hey, beat back the lie with the truth, advance in your money journey to live a fully funded life. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit iwbnin.com. We'll catch you next time.